everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be continuing with our recap and review of Power Season 2 with Episode 2 titled Great Consequence. Now before we get to the review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep updated on all things Critic-Verse. But to also help me reach my goal of 500 subscribers. Now on to the rest of the video. Once again, the title of the episode is Great Consequence. Now, the title of the episode has a couple different meanings over the course of its runtime. Diamond believes Tommy killing Chewie will have greater consequences if he and Jenard continually retaliate, and he warns that to both Tommy and Jenard. Vic is going on a self-destructive path only to be pulled out by his father, who will come to find out the great consequence of seeking his son's allegiance. Tommy starts to pit the Mexicans versus the Serbs, not thinking of the consequence that could come to Miguel and Maria. Also, the innocents that get caught in the crossfire are shown to be the true great consequence of the episode. The episode starts with the police looking at Chewie's body, and a patrolman can't get any witnesses that a detective credits to the street code. The detective clocks the saxophone player from the last episode, who's nicknamed Chicken Wing, who lets him know Chewie flipped his allegiance, and this was probably CBI retaliation. Next, Tommy interrupts Diamond clapping some cheeks to let him know he handled the Chewie situation, which upsets Diamond for acting without telling him. And despite his lecture, this reminds Tommy of Ghost, and he sides with Diamond. Meanwhile, Jenard informs his boys of Chewie's death, and Jenard gives the green light on Tommy. One of his boys saying that it's on sight while Jenard plays tough with an assault rifle. Tommy then finds Vic grieving at Gloria's grave and tries to find common ground, even offers him the chance to join CBI. He just wants to know who killed Liliana. Vic knows. We know he knows, and Tommy definitely knows he knows. But Vic tells Tommy he'll let him know if he hears anything. But then Vic asks Tommy about who leaked the Dahlia information, and Tommy throws Vic's own line back at him, which was hilarious. Walter and Paulie take a meeting with a pharmaceutical exec who wants them to sell a bad batch of opioids to make a return on them, and Walter takes the deal. Claudia sleeps with Brendan Doyle for info. Diamond pulls up on Treason's spot to speak to Jenard to convince him not to retaliate and focus on the business, and tells Jenard to take responsibility for his actions, which does leave Jenard shook. Walter talks with Vic about selling the pills on the south side, believing Jenard to be the weak link, and they'll take his turf and then expand to take Tommy and Diamond's as well. Vic reveals the Dahlia situation to Walter and declines his offer, passing it on to his sister. Diamond's PO visits his shop for an unscheduled piss check, but Diamond texts Tommy to go meet Miguel without him, because Tommy comes in and plays the part of a customer while he recognizes the CEO. Jenard tells his boys to fall back and put the pause on Tommy because of all they have against them. Like, they're losing bodies left and right. The Serbs and the Mexicans, they need to focus on making that paper. Walter comes to Claudia to pawn off his expansion plan onto her and pleads with Claudia to talk to Vic and pull him back in. Tommy goes to meet with the Connect and walks into a Serb ambush, and while he manages to have Miguel's back, he does get hit in the process and Tommy goes down, which is a rare occasion in Power. The DA's office gets turned down on their task force request, But the DA seems to have something to prove as she turns down a subordinate who says he has inside help with the mayor. Miguel and one of his guys are discussing retaliation while Tommy is in Maria's care getting him stitched up in the back. And the two flirt while Tommy overhears the details of a drop. Claudia finds Vic in a dive bar, and the conversation takes a turn south when Claudia throws Gloria's death back in his face, which just manages to push Vic further away. The DA reaches out to her government contact on getting her task force, but she tells her she needs CPD support to get it, but that's going to be impossible for her, but more on that later. At Shanti's gym, one of Jenard's men is venting to her about Jenard's leadership and how his soldiers are flipping sides every day. Then Tommy informs Diamond of Miguel's beef with the Serbs, and he wants to capitalize on that. Diamond then gives him the rundown on the drop location, and Tommy says they'll never see them coming. Miguel is pleading with his boss for the green light to retaliate on the Serbs, but he's denying Miguel's request, and that if he hears Miguel retaliated, he goes into detail about having very graphic things done to Maria, which Miguel just has to sit there and take. The Serbs then come to speak with Jenard and request compensation until they get the territory that Jenard promised them, and he has to give them the money he owed to Miguel, further putting stress on Jenard. Jenard then goes to talk with Shanti over losing guys to his brother, and she gives him a loan, and he has dinner with her. Tommy and Diamond kill 2 Serbs, but this turns out to just be phase 1 of their plan. Later, it's shown that Miguel's guys are going to the drop point, but are ambushed by Tommy and Diamond as they pose as the Serbs. And as Tommy is about to get into a fist fight with one of Miguel's guys, Diamond just comes and runs him over in a kind of like weird looking scene. I guess the CGI just wasn't right. Claudia is pissed because Walter gave the Southside Project back to Vic on the terms that he takes Claudia off of it. Walter fully admits that his reasons are purely sexist and that he just wants Vic to fall in line because Vic is his only son, and Claudia doesn't have the balls. Miguel comes to the drop point to find his men dead, his drugs gone, and a couple of bodies that Tommy and Diamond staged to look like the Serbs were behind the attack. Tommy's plans for Chicago domination are going as planned. They just gotta find a way to move the new weight they just got without drawing attention to themselves. Shanti then advises Jenard to get his shit together because his men don't trust him, like earlier in the episode where Little K was venting to her. Vic is back at Gloria's grave talking to it, but Vic reveals that he's only working with his father because he plans on destroying the family business from the inside. Tommy is at a stoplight eating, and all of a sudden, one of Jenard's guys, Little K, pulls up to perform a drive-by on him. But the strays don't end up hurting Tommy. They only end up hitting some civilians, and Tommy gets away unscathed. Turns out, the detective from earlier in the episode and the woman Stacy, I believe she's the DA, are together, and it's date night. And Stacy tries to convince him to put a word into his commander so she can get CPD support for her task force. But he declines, not wanting to get in the middle of his boss and someone he's involved with. The detective then gets a call and has to cut their date short, and he ends up going to the crime scene that Little K just caused. And a little girl was just hit by it. And he says He calls Stacy and tells her that she may get her task force after all because of this accidental death. And that's the final scene of the episode. Well, this episode felt a lot tamer compared to last week's episode. Even though there was a lot more action, everything felt more condensed compared to the premiere. A couple of things I'd like to talk about from this episode. I made a joke online about Jenard being the only character getting some cheeks in the premiere, and I think the writers heard me because 4 of the main characters have sexual scenes in this episode. Jenard, like last week, Claudia had sex for info, Vic was getting top in the back of a liquor store, and Diamond with 2 different women. One thing I don't like, treason is such a stupid name for a gang. I don't know why anyone would want to be in a gang where the name is synonymous with betrayal. Like, who would join that? The Flynns are uncomfortable selling the Bad Batch to their own people, but have no problem selling it to the poor people on the South Side, mainly black people. Miguel's boys managed to get info on Tommy from a character named Chico, who was boys with Julio from the OG Power series. And I remember Julio, but I don't remember if Chico ever made an appearance. Let me know in the comments if he was in the original series. And there seems to be strife in the DA's office as the DA shoots down help from one of her people, even if it could have sped up the process. Now, Miguel is the connect, but even he has a boss. And we're introduced to Che, someone that doesn't care if Miguel or his guys die. It's all about the money for him. And then he further goes on to emasculate Miguel with the obscene things he says about his sister. And Miguel just has to sit there and take it. Now, the character of Claudia feels like the most annoying character for me because it feels like she doesn't belong in this show. Like she belongs in a show like Succession, because all of this drug dealing is just more or less like business for her, and she talks about it like she's working at a white-collar company and it's just a company project. Vic's solo scenes in the episode were kind of the worst, and I really hope they give the character something more because he just feels like the Disney Channel equivalent of a thug. Well, anyway, those are all of my thoughts on this episode. Let me know yours in the comments. Thanks for joining me in the Critic-Verse. See you next time.